It's red. Okay. Yeah.
To you today, the iconic, the talented drummer for the Doors, Mr. John Densmore. Now, what you may not know is that Mr. Densmore, in addition to being a famous musician, is a great friend of the Bunch Center, a great friend of UCLA. He endowed a scholarship here in 1991 that over the years has supported dozens of students majoring and minoring in African American studies. And this gift was motivated by his experiences as a young musician and the influences of students here at UCLA. So he wanted to give back, and so we're really appreciative of that. So, today we have an exciting program. Mr. Densmore is going to come up and talk about his book, The Doors Unhinged. He's also, I believe, going to perform for us. All right. And then, to wrap things up, we're going to have a book signing at the end of the presentation. So, without further ado, Mr. John Densmore.
Thank you, Darnell. And thank you for coming out on this incredibly warm day. TGIA, thank God for air conditioning. But you know, we're in the basement. It's good down here. Maybe this is the coolest place to be in LA today, besides being cool. So, I'm going to read, just to set it up, from Riders on the Storm first. I have not one, but two self-centered memoirs. That's a joke. Oh, hey, I want to thank the Center for African American Studies for setting up this reading. So, first I'm going to read a little bit from Riders, which is sort of the beginning. Before we had recorded our first album, but it hadn't been released. And, you know, I was hoping maybe get the rent paid for 10 years. What is it? 40, 50. My hair's gray. I'm still doing this Doors thing. But I'm very proud of it. So this is, as I said, before we recorded our first album, and it hadn't been released, and here we go. Our first album, simply called The Doors, had just been released. An existential album, the late great Ray Manzarek said, by four incredibly hungry young men striving and dying to make it, desperately wanting to get a good record out to the American public, wanting the public to like it. When the album was released, each of the band members got 10 copies. And I held off for a few days, and then finally played the record for my parents. I was proud of it, but I was nervous about their reaction to a particular song called The End. This first cut is called Break On Through. It's fast and loud. This next one is Soul Kitchen. Has a nice groove. I like the rhythm. Nice feeling. Check out the lyrics. The cars crawl past, all stuffed with ice. The street lights shed their hollow glow. Your brain seems bruised with numb surprise. Still one place to go. Oh man, Jim's lyrics are incredible. Crystal Ship's a beautiful ballad. You'll like this one, it's a little cutie. She's a 20th century fox. She's a... Okay. This next one, Alabama song, it's a different kind of European. We didn't write this. It was written by Bertolt Brecht and Kurt Weill from a German opera. Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey. You see why I'm the drummer? The last cut on side one, it's called Light My Fire. I think it could be a hit. Sounds very nice, my dad said as I turned the record over. Wait till you hear the end. And we'll see if you still think it's nice. I could play it real soft or just skip it. Dum, 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 dum. Now, this is an old blues. Backdoor Man. We didn't write this either. Willie Dixon. Yeah. I'd like to use another cutie. End of the night's kind of eerie. It's fun to create a mood around Jim's lyrics. Well, here it goes. This is called The End. It's kind of weird. It's long, about 10 minutes. Jim wrote some stuff about Greek tragedy, Oedipus or something. Do you know the story? I didn't either. Well, it's about a son killing his father and then messing with his mother. It's all very symbolic. I mean, Jim didn't mean it literally. I quickly put the needle on the record to dispel the awkwardness. I listened with him, reliving every drum beat. When the listening party was over, my parents, we sat silently, drained. My mom looked teary, my dad stoic. They complimented me cordially, and I left. Whew, that was over. So since we're 10 miles from Hollywood, we're going to cut to 20 years later. And my bandmates wanted to tour with the name. Founding members of the Doors, former members of the Doors is fine with me, but they used the name. And so I called, Jim had passed, and I called his estate, and we entered this difficult struggle. And that's what my second book is about, The Doors Unhinged. And so this is a section in the book called Interlude, and it's I'm waiting for the verdict. Ultimately, the estate and I prevailed, and the Doors got put back on their hinges. But, you know, lawyers, I was countersued for not upholding my fiduciary duty as a businessman in a corporation, and by okaying all songs for commercials. You know, businesses, you're supposed to make as much money as possible. But this was an artistic endeavor. And when Jim was alive, we had an offer, come on Buick, light my fire. And he said, great, I'll smash the car on television with a sledgehammer. Oh, I guess that's a no. Jim is no longer with me. He's my ancestor. I want to honor him, so I've stuck to my guns on this. And I was countersued for more money than all of us ever made collectively in our life to scare me away. And it scared me, but I didn't go away. So, here we go. I was supposed to have a lavalier where I could not hold this and walk around, but it didn't work. So I'm going to be juggling papers and mic. It's the weekend and I need a break from all this linear thought lawyers seem to love. Music will be just the cure, so I'm on my way to the Inglewood Forum to see Tom Petty's band. I love their music and especially love Tom's dedication to his fans. he has a ceiling on his ticket prices and allows no VIP section in the front for those execs who don't really care about the music. He said, I don't want the real fans in the nosebleed section. This evening will be a great antidote for the pressure I've been under. In the audience, I find myself sitting next to Jim Ladd, the legendary Los Angeles rock disc jockey, who's an old friend. When he tells me he's going to introduce Petty, I get an idea. You see, Tom's latest album is called The Last DJ, and the title cut is about Jim Ladd, the very man sitting beside me. The song tells a story about how, as a result of the corporate takeover of a radio station, the disc jockeys were ordered to stick to the dictated playlist. But the last DJ wouldn't toe the line. And in real life, that was exactly what Ladd did. When the corporate heads threatened to fire him if he wouldn't play the music they wanted him to play, he said, fine, I'll take my fans with me. The station backed down, and today he's one of the only freeform DJs left doing his thing, playing what he wants. Hey Jim, what if I introduced you before you introduced Tom? I say with a mischievous grin. His eyes light up. During intermission, we go backstage and run the idea by the promoter. It's a go. I'm standing in the wings, waiting for my cue to walk out in front of 14,000 Petty fans already frothing at the mouth. They're stamping at their feet, making a lot of noise. The reason? They know Tom cares about them. There's another song on the new album, Money Becomes King, which is also one of the reasons I'm here. It's about some dedicated fans who become disillusioned with their hero because he starts doing light beer commercials and can't remember his original lyrics. This particular song reminds me of The Who's Pete Townsend interview in Rolling Stone, where he is challenged by reporter Chris Heath for licensing his songs for various commercials. There's a few interesting uses of The Who's catalog at the moment. I thought it was strange that you let them use Bargain in the Nissan car ad, given that that song is so very much not about that. Townsend. Yeah, not many people know about that. Well, correct me if I'm interpreting it wrong, but the song is saying that you're prepared to give yourself up for enlightenment or spiritual satisfaction, and that this bargain is the best you've ever had. Yeah, that's right. Which is about as anti-materialistic a message as one could think of. So what's your point? My point is that it's now being used to sell shiny new motor cars. I still don't get your point. You haven't completed the argument. Well, I'll complete it then. The suggestion is that the ad is that one might buy a super Nissan car, and that's the best one for the finest price, and that's the bargain. Well, that's their suggestion, isn't it? Who fans will often think this is my song, it belongs to me. It reminds me of the first time I kissed Susie, and you can't sell it. And the fact is that I can, and I will, and I have. I don't give a fuck about the first time you kissed Susie. Whoa. Whoa. Okay. Uh-oh. I mixed up the pages. Okay. Well, The Who may have more fans than Tom Petty, but they can't be as dedicated as this crowd, which swells to a roar when I'm introduced. It's flattering, but it comes from the fact that besides admiring me, they now know that, like them, I'm a Petty fan. As Morrison wrote, music inflames temperament. This crowd is on fire, and I say, hello! I'm here to introduce the man who will bring out the band. Some call him the last DJ. They go nuts as I bow to Mr. Ladd and make my exit. After he is introduced by Jim, while Petty rocks the house, I think back about a number of artists who portray the other side of Pete Townsend's argument. the ones who side with my belief that art is a gift that shouldn't be entirely thought of as a commodity. Tom Waits, recently introduced into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, for example, sent a poetic letter to the editor following the publication of my article in The Nation, where I wrote about this subject. Tom Waits.
Thank you for your eloquent rant by John Densmore of the Doors on the subject of artists allowing their songs to be used as commercials. I spoke out whenever possible on the topic, even before the Frito-Lay case.
He sued Frito corn chips because, as he said,
they used a sound-alike version of my song Step Right Up so convincing I thought it was me. After much trial and tribulation, we prevailed, and the court determined my voice was my property. Songs carry emotional information, and some transport us back to a poignant time, place, or event in our lives. It's no wonder a corporation would want to hitch a ride on the spell these songs cast and encourage you to buy soft drinks, underwear, or automobiles while you're in their spell. Corporations are hoping to hijack a culture's memories for their product. They want an artist's integrity, credibility, and goodwill, and the energy the songs have gathered over the years. They suck the life and meaning from the songs and impregnate them with the promise of life with their product. Eventually, artists will be going on stage like race car drivers, covered in hundreds of logos sewn to their costume. Stay pure, John. Your credibility, your integrity, and your honor are things no company should buy. Thank you, Tom.
So the loyalty of the fans tonight is palpable as they demand several encores from Petty's band. My mind flashes back to the early days that every band goes through, struggling to get a toehold in an ever-increasing difficult industry. I'm not saying that no rock song should ever be sold as a commercial. Certainly a new group that's out there struggling to pay the rent could get some help in an ever-increasing industry, increasingly difficult industry. But once one gets a toehold on success, maybe they should drop the soundtrack to the TV ads or they'll get stuck. Lewis Hyde, in his seminal book, The Gift, says, a work of art has to have a gift component or it will only be a commodity. Even if you paid a price at the door of a museum or concert hall, when touched by a work of art, something comes to us which has nothing to do with the price. The Tom Petty show ends and Jim Ladd and I head to the dressing room to pay our respects. Tom is very gracious and a kindred vibe is in the air. I remember reading about Petty having the same reaction I did when I heard Good Vibrations, a metaphoric song in the 60s by the Beach Boys. And I'm talking about not a singer. It was selling Orange Crush soda pop. I was crushed. Whatever gift I felt I received about the message of love and the counterculture was doused with yellow dye number 5. My flower power was wilting and almost dead from the onslaught of inorganic commerce and pesticides. One of Jim Morrison's gifts was to write lyrics that seemed to have universal meaning, though everyone gets a little something different from the words. I'm sure his intention wasn't, love me 2 times, because I just took Viagra. Tom Petty, Jim Ladd, and I say our goodbyes, and I hit the road. I get into my Prius, and remember another letter I received in response to my Nation article. Makes me want to puke when I hear Jimi Hendrix selling Pontiacs. I can't believe Hendrix would ever have signed off on that. But Hendrix, like Morrison, died too young, and evidently his heirs only inherited the rights, not his ideals. Morrison was luckier. Believe me, the fans do care. I pull into my garage, just sit there for a few minutes. I can't stop ruminating on all this. The line in the sand I've drawn has turned into a wall. I realize it's time to get off my butt and get into the house. Thank God the heirs of Dylan's deceased pal, Johnny Cash, had the sensibility not to okay the classic song Ring of Fire for an ad to cure hemorrhoids.
May Johnny's sphincter burning rest in peace.
That's that.
All right, one final section. This is unhinged again. Let's see. Yeah. This is, it's from a chapter called Interlude, and I'm waiting for the verdict, and I'm thinking about, here I'm at an institution of learning, and I'm reading this because I'm thinking about teachers I had, and these are teachers from the school of the street. I didn't get my degree. I got 30 more units, I get a BA. I don't know. Oh, maybe I'll get a honorary degree, huh? All right, so I wrote about Ravi Shankar. I studied at his Indian school for music, and here's someone else. My mentor, Elvin Jones, my main man, the polyrhythmic jazz machine behind John Coltrane, broke on through to the other side on May 18th, 2004. The motor behind Train laid it down on drums so heavy, so strong, that his pulse will be felt for centuries. I feel so blessed to have my path cross Elvin several times in my life. Originally my teenage idol, he became a friend and the most emulated musical thread I got going. It was 1963 and I nervously showed my fake ID from Tijuana to the doorman at Shelley's Manhole, and the jazz club bouncer looked at it, gave me one last glance that said it was fake, and let me in to see my hero. At 16, I'd already pored over all of Coltrane's Impulse LPs while my ears were being fed candy. Now I was going to see the man. He sat behind one of the greatest jazz quartets in the history of the art form, and he did it with a huge grin. The Beatles hadn't hit yet, and Elvin was my muse. Elvin Jones blazed a new path for all the rest of us timekeepers. He was the first to free up the job of clockwork, improvising continually but never sacrificing a strong sense of pulse. His constant conversation with Coltrane inspired me later to try and have a musical dialogue with Jim Morrison. Not a word was spoken, but so much was said. Elvin played so loose, it gave me the courage to literally stop the steady groove on When the Music's Over and during Jim Morrison's rap about the earth, and just jab at my kit in quick, expressive grunts. When the music's over, when the music, turn up the what have they done to the earth? What have they done to our fair sister? Stuck her with knives in the side of the dawn, tied her with fences and dragged her down. I hear a very gentle sound. Boom, with your ear down to the ground. We want the world and we want it now. Yeah, right. So, Elvin churned rhythms like an egg beater, serving up multi-meals every 4 bars. With his beats perpetually on the edge, he sounded like he was going to fall into the drum set, and he never did. Between sets at the famous Manhole, I went back to the bathroom, not because I had to relieve myself, but to get closer to the dressing room. I heard voices and laughter from behind the wall because my heroes were inside. I opened the dark redwood door of the head and occupied myself washing my hands until I heard the same voices coming out of the opposite room. Not wasting time, I spun around, I grabbed the knob, wet hands and all. I heard the musicians passing by on their way to the stage. I couldn't get the door open. Wiping my hands on my pants, I used both of them to open the door. I got it open, and John Coltrane was standing in front of me. Oh my God. I motioned that the head was open, and I chilled by shunning eye contact. He just walked to the stage, and I noticed everyone sort of quiet down when he passed. I looked at Elvin's face, and he smiled at me. Other than dissecting every nuance of his style on records, down to the moaning between quarter notes, this was the first flesh and blood contact of several to come. When the last set was over, I lingered in the back, hearing Elvin say to Train, "Hotel, hotel." I repeated the phrase over and over to my friends the next few days. They thought I was nuts. My next live contact with the most seminal jazz quartet in history was a year later at UCLA's Royce Hall. Hey, they burned such a hole in the place that half the audience was gone before they finished. Some fans just didn't understand. If Coltrane hadn't helped define bebop and cool jazz with Miles Davis, he wouldn't have had the permission to go outside. Knowing his history, I ate up all of Coltrane's experimental excursions into space. It was actually inner space, as exemplified in one of his titles, Chasin' the Train. At Royce Hall, they played that one for about 45 minutes. And in the middle, McCoy Tyner, the pianist, just walked off into the wings, and that left Jimmy Garrison, the bassist, and Elvin to face off with their leader. Coltrane turned around with his back to us, entered a duel with my percussion master, and it was 20 minutes of the most primitive, emotional cathartic I've ever heard coming out of any musicians. Elvin's stamina was a perfect match for the tenor player. After the concert, people were allowed to wander up on the stage, so yours truly sheepishly played the role of groupie. This wasn't a rock show, so crossing the line between artist and fan didn't involve the Berlin Wall. I still lacked the nerve to actually say anything to my teacher, so I just watched Elvin use a hammer to remove the nails he pounded into the floor of the stage at Royce Hall to keep the drums from sliding. The man played hard. Yeah, I thought back to the early Doors rehearsals where we fashioned Light My Fire after some of the chord changes in My Favorite Things. Coltrane had taken a corny Broadway tune from The Sound of Music and made it his own. In 1995, I caught Elvin at the Vine Street Bar and Grill, a jazz club just a couple blocks down from the old manhole. I was especially nervous this time. Taking my autobiography under my arm, I headed backstage to actually talk to Elvin. After witnessing a performance that had as much power on drums as I'd seen 30 years earlier down the street, man. By this time, I'd received many accolades about my drumming, but this was jazz. This wasn't rock and roll. This was the the root of all my learning about the craft of drumming. So with trepidation, I introduced myself, which didn't ring any bells for Elvin. So I quickly held up riders on the storm and I said, "This is for you. It's my autobiography about playing in a rock band. In here I wrote that you gave me my hands." I was defensively prepared for condescendence, jazz being the higher art, but that wasn't a quality in Mr. Jones' repertoire. He was so incredibly kind and gracious, and once again I was humbled to be in his presence. He spoke in a quiet way, thanking me for coming down. I felt complete. I'd honored the man who had taught me so much. Several years later, the Machine was playing the Jazz Bakery in Culver City, and I felt another pilgrimage to Mecca and Elvin's playing hadn't deteriorated in the least. I went backstage for an autograph. His eyes lit up when I asked him who were some of his mentors. Sid Catlin, yeah, big Sid Catlin, among others. Dismissing the idea of looking like a 50-year-old groupie, I asked for autographs on my old Coltrane LPs that I brought down. Don't be embarrassed by that, Elvin beamed. He John Hancocked my collection. His wife tried to move the party along and get the living legend home. There would be no late-night meals with the Godfather of Skins tonight. As we walked towards the car, my guru let me take the cymbal bag from under his arm and carry it the rest of the way. It was only a few yards to the car, but I'd waited 35 years to have the honor. Here we got. How long have I been going?
Not long enough.
Yeah, I got to sign some books and stuff, but I think I will just, I was planning this, but why not? I'll just do a little drumming into a Jim Morrison poem. It's an excerpt from American Prayer, his prayer for our country. How's it go? Do you know the warm progress under the stars? Do you know we exist? Have you forgotten the keys to the kingdom? Have we forgotten the keys to the kingdom? Do you know we exist? Are you alive and born yet? Thank you. Have you been born yet? And are you alive? I got that wrong. Right. Hardcore. Let's reinvent the gods. All the myths of the ages. Celebrate symbols from deep elder forests. Have we forgotten the lessons of the ancient war? Do you know that we are being led to slaughters by placid admirals and that fat, slow generals are getting obscene on young blood? Oh, wow. I'm sick of doubt. I'm sick of dour faces staring at me from the TV tower. I want roses in my garden bower. Dig royal rubies. O great creator of being, grant us one more hour to perform our art and perfect our lives. Thank you. I'll see you in the back in a little bit.